Montoya, Teresa Leisure Fernandez, Joe Sanchez, Kyle Tisdale, and Valerie Plame, and we'll be joined very shortly, hopefully by Marco Cerna. So Howie, go ahead and, let's kick this thing off.
Absolutely. I first of all want to say thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me the opportunity to be here from my home in Silver City, because this was something that was really important. When you look and see the Congressional District 3 and what it makes up is many of the rural areas of the state of New Mexico, where I come from, in a rural area as well. And we know that the issues in our areas are so important that we have to have people out there who are going to represent us properly. I just want to first of all, give just an update how fortunate that we are in this state to have Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham leading the charge. Her experience as a cabinet secretary in 2 agencies, a county commissioner, and her understanding of the federal government has been so instrumental in making sure that New Mexico is ahead of the game. So I'm grateful to continually learn from her, seeing her courage and the decisions that she's made to make sure that we can protect New Mexicans first and foremost. As you may have seen, the New York Times, for example, and other outlets have really shared that New Mexico has done a tremendous job in slowing the virus spread and making sure that we can protect people as much as possible. But there's still a lot more work that can be done. And I want to encourage people to continue practicing staying at home, social distancing, and to adhere to the health regulations and the health emergencies that are out there, because they are making a difference, but there's still so much more that can be done. And then I wanted to also just to thank every single one of the candidates who are running. You guys are running extremely hard in a campaign that none of us have ever been through, but you're not stopping. You're reaching out to voters, and opportunity and platforms just like you're providing here in Taos County is so instrumental. And so I think that as we continue to advocate for our communities, that we remember that we're in this together. And I'm so grateful to know every single one of the candidates personally. I have a tremendous amount of respect for each one of you. And thank you for wanting to make a difference, because the difference that it makes is seen on a daily basis. Because we have a Democratic congressional delegation that is in Washington fighting for us. Today, we have more support for our hospitals. Because we have a congressional Democratic delegation in Washington, today we have more support that is going directly to impact New Mexicans, rather than giving bailouts to huge corporations that would have been left to the Republicans' choice had they had their way. And because today we have a Democratic delegation that's representing us and responsible to the people, we have a state in New Mexico who's better off for it. That's only going to be continually furthered, and we know the tremendous work that Congressman Ben Ray Lujan has done in representing CD3. Whoever steps into that role, I want to make sure that you have that same support from the governor, from the senators, and from myself in helping you be successful. Thank you for that, Darren.
Yeah. Howie, thank you very much for those beautiful remarks. It really demonstrates how fortunate New Mexico is, even during this trying time, that we have such strong leadership in Santa Fe and in Washington to help us navigate these waters. And I want to thank you personally and our Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham for being very aggressive and forward-thinking with the measures that have been taken to protect New Mexicans. And we're all hurting right now. We're all struggling. And my sincerest condolences go out to New Mexicans and Americans and people worldwide who have lost their lives or family members due to this novel coronavirus. But this is something we are in together, and we will get through together. And it's people in New Mexico can rest assured that we have strong leadership willing to make the tough choices necessary to keep our state safe. And we have people willing to step up into those positions and make those tough choices for us here and across the country. And this congressional district, it's one of the largest in the country by geography. It's one of the most diverse in the country in terms of population, in terms of the rural and urban centers that are encompassing it. It's got, all or part of 16 counties out of the 33 that we have in the state of New Mexico. We've got a large part of the Navajo Nation and 15 other tribes that are represented by the Congressional District. Since its inception in 1982, we've seen 4 representatives hold this seat, starting with Bill Richardson, and then Bill Redmond, and then Tom Udall, who is now our senator, and Ben Ray Lujan, who come November will be the next New Mexico United States senator, because we are going to keep New Mexico blue, and we're going to send him up to continue doing the work that he's doing in Washington. In terms of the economy of this district, we have oil, we have gas, we have education, we have healthcare, we have mining, we have science, we have technology, we have small businesses, we have tourism. If you talk about what it means to be a New Mexican and what it means to work in New Mexico, and we have so much across this district, and one of you 7 people tonight will be our next representative in Washington. And you all come to this from a variety of experiences. Some of you are political neophytes. Some of you have long family histories in politics in northern New Mexico, in New Mexico in general. Some of you have raised a lot of money. Some of you are running grassroots campaigns. But all of you are committed to seeing this race through. And on behalf of the County Democratic Party, and myself as the county chair, and Anjanette Brush as our vice chair, George Brown as our treasurer. Please click on his name before you leave the video conference tonight. And our secretary, Annette Ariano. We want to thank every one of you who are here as panelists, and every one of you who are watching tonight in your living rooms or wherever you're watching this, because this is a race that's going to be decided in the primary, given how blue this 3rd district is. So we have 7 candidates tonight. We've got John Blair, we've got Teresa Leger Fernandez, we've got Laura Montoya, we've got Valerie Flame, we've got Joseph Sanchez, we've got Marco Cerna, and we have Kyle Tisdall. And we will be asking a series of questions. Some are going to be quick, yes, no, give us your favorite, etc. answers. Some are we're going to ask you to go into depth for 30 seconds to a minute. And then we also want to have a roundtable discussion tonight, because really a lot of the work that takes place in Congress is in committees and is discussing difficult topics with other congressional representatives. And really, we want to see how you're going to work individually and in that group setting. The bulk of this we hope to have wrapped up in an hour, and we do have a commitment from all the candidates to hang out for about 30 minutes afterward for overtime, where we'll get some questions from the audience answered. And hopefully we can do this again soon and get more into depth with questions for all these candidates who one will be our next representative. So we're going to start this thing off with introductions. I'd like to ask each candidate to keep their opening remarks to 1 minute, and to keep it a little bit organized. I have 26 letters in this funky donkey Democratic Party trucker hat. And I'm going to pull out a letter. This is similar to what the Secretary of State, Maggie Toulouse-Oliver, does to determine order of ballot in municipal elections. So I'm going to pull out a random letter from this funky donkey hat at our funky donkey store at taosvotesblue.com. And whichever candidate is the letter or next up in the series will go first for this introduction. So I'm going to shake it up. I have my dog Django here, who's kind of sleeping, but he assures the crowd that there are 26 letters in this hat. Pull one out. Even close my eyes. All right, we have the letter H. So next up in the series with that would be Teresa Leger Fernandez. You get to go first and give us 1 minute to introduce yourself.
Okay, hello, and hello to all of Taos County and all the district. I know people are looking from everywhere. So I'm Teresa Leger Fernandez, and as many of you have heard me say before, I'm wanting to protect what we love. Protecting our families, our healthcare system, and our democracy has never been as important as in this moment of crisis. And now more than ever, I think that we need leadership that is grounded in real experience in our district. I know the issues that we face today in this crisis because I worked on them yesterday. I know what healthcare should look like in northern New Mexico because I helped build health clinics. I know all these communities that don't have access to broadband, so cannot be taking telemedicine or education, because I fought for that and I fought for voting rights. I'm very lucky here in Taos to be endorsed by Taos Pueblo, with whom I've worked on economic development issues and even on getting money for that beautiful sacred village of theirs. And what I've learned from all of this work with the diverse communities that you mentioned earlier is that we are strongest when we are in community and we have a sense of community. And that's what we are doing tonight. And I'm very grateful because you are our community tonight. And so I want to thank you for allowing me to be here and be in community with you. So muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Ms. Teresa Leger Fernandez. Laura Montoya.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. And I'll be as quick as possible because I'm in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and my internet service is horrible. I'm very happy to be here with all of you. Thank you so much for putting this on. Years of government experience that I bring to the table working at the federal, state, and local level. I'm currently the Sandoval County Treasurer, elected twice and in my last year. Sandoval County really represents many pueblos, the Navajo Nation, towns and villages. It's really a microcosm of District 3. But being from Las Vegas and Mora, two of the poorest counties in the district and in the state, I've really been able to develop some skill sets that I've learned growing up and being raised in northern New Mexico, and then coming now from the fastest growing county and working on billion-dollar budgets and managing millions of dollars, especially now during COVID. It's a perfect time for me to bring these skill sets to the table. So I'm looking forward to the conversation, and if anyone is interested while we're all talking to look at the websites, mine is lauramontoya4nm.com, and I look forward to talking about the experiences.
Thank you. Ms. Plame, Valerie Plame.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm speaking to you from home, just where you are as well. I'm in my bedroom slippers, probably like you. Thank you to the Taos County Democratic Party for hosting this. I am seeking the honor of serving you in Congress. Why? Because these are really perilous times for our country. And I would love the opportunity to bring my crisis management experience, my leadership experience honed over years serving as a covert CIA operations officer, and bring that to bear for New Mexico. Now more than ever, New Mexico, as we go through this and as we seek to rebuild our economy at the other side of this crisis, you are going to need a representative who is strong, who will fight for you, who knows how to put the pieces together and bring the people together at the table. I seek that position because I know I can do that and bring that leadership. I seek to serve this community. I seek to serve my country again. As Laura was just saying, broadband is an issue. This crisis has also opened up the the flaws in our healthcare system. And while this is all going on, the Trump administration is busily rolling back any sort of protections on clean air and water. So these are the things that we need to protect and go forward with, and I would love to have your support, and thank you again to Taos County Democrats for putting this on.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Plame. Mr. Joseph Sanchez.
Hello, everyone. I'm State Representative Joseph Sanchez. I want to thank the Democratic Party of Taos for putting this on. I want to thank all the listeners out there tonight. A little bit about myself, for those who don't know me, I'm State Rep for District 40, which is Rio Arriba, Mora, Colfax, and San Miguel counties. These 4 counties are at the center of the district. I grew up in the Espanola Valley. I've experienced a lot of the hardships that our state and our country are going through, whether it's education, poverty, or addiction. I'm the only candidate running that has the experience, that has actually appropriated money, that has actually passed legislation. I've helped pass legislation for things for missing persons, solar things, renewables. I have my master's degree in electrical engineering. I have my MBA. I'm a Lobo. I'm a proud Aggie. That's not usually the case where you're proud to be both, but I had the honor of going to both schools. I'm proud to have attended 2 New Mexico schools, and it's just an honor to be here in front of everyone, and I look forward to the conversation tonight. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Marco Cerna.
Hey, everybody. Thank you again to the Taos Democratic Party for hosting this. I have to give a quick shout out, because you can't see it the way I set this up, to Ani East for making this wonderful Marco for Congress sign. She did excellent work, I believe. There's a few hearts up there, which you guys can't see. But my name is Marco Cerna. I am the current district attorney of Santa Fe, Rio Arriba, Los Alamos counties, which is the 1st judicial district. And I ran for district attorney because I saw the issues that my community growing up in Espanola was dealing with the opioid epidemic. And fortunately ran on a platform that addressed the community in building up the community, treating these people like people. And I'm very proud of the record that I have with the diversion programs that I've not only expanded, but wellness courts that I've helped create specifically here in Santa Fe with the help of Judge Segura. I bring that same passion about community and community involvement to this congressional race. Since I've started, I have from the start said we need to address economic development, healthcare, which both of these are really being affected right now by COVID-19. We're seeing the effects not only in New Mexico, rural New Mexico, the country and the world. And so we really need to address this head on and make sure that we protect our local business. My mom's a small business owner in Espanola, and she needs to be protected along with all the others because they're the lifeblood of our economy. In addition, healthcare. This is showing the holes that we have within our healthcare system. So we need to make sure that we continue with addressing and improving the Affordable Care Act. And I know that we all are passionate about this, but I don't believe there's anybody more passionate than me when it comes to New Mexico, my community in this district. With that being said, I'm very excited about tonight's conversation, and thank you to all the other candidates for being a part of this. Sorry for being late. I was having technical difficulties. Broadband, right, Laura? But in Northern Mexico, we deal with this, but soon, hopefully, we'll have broadband. But pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cerna. Mr. Kyle Tisdale.
Thank you, Darien, and thank you to the Taos Democratic Party. I'm glad to be joining you from Taos as well, and proud of our local Democratic Party and organizing us here tonight. Also, thank you to our Lieutenant Governor for joining us. I appreciated his opening remarks, and all the rest of the candidates as well. And I also want to thank all the viewers out there, however many of you there are. We find ourselves in unprecedented times, and quite frankly, it's good to see all of the other candidates' faces. We're used to showing up together at different events, and so it's good to have that connection again. So thank you again to the Taos Democratic Party. But we are in unprecedented times, and I think what this current crisis is showing us is the gaps in the current system that exist. And what this calls for in this moment and coming out of this crisis is the fundamental and systemic transformation of the systems that are really holding us down. The gaps in the system and the safety net where people are falling through. There is not adequate health care. There is not adequate worker rights and labor rights and unemployment rights. And these are some of the things that we need to change, not only in this moment and in relief that Congress is passing, but coming out of this crisis and making sure that we deal with these sort of fundamental gaps in how we take care of people in this country. I am a public interest environmental attorney. I have spent my career fighting for people and communities living in the shadow of fossil fuel exploitation. And New Mexico has been an energy colony. And we have sacrificed our people and our lands to corporate profits for generations upon generations. And the reason I have gotten into this race is because we need to see fundamental transformation of our economy and the systems and how we take care of people. And I'm glad to join the conversation and hopefully get a chance to talk about these issues in greater detail with all the rest of the candidates. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kyle. Mr. John Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of you at Taos County who put this together. Mr. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for joining us as well. First and foremost, I want to say that I hope that everyone watching and listening tonight is healthy and safe right now with this crisis. I send a lot of love and thoughts and prayers to those who are struggling with the crisis, both health and economic, and know that we're going to work real hard to do right by you. If I can leave you with one thing tonight, it's that we are at a critical point in our country's history and that we can't afford to elect someone to Congress who's going to be learning on the job. Now, I'm proud to tell you I've spent the last 25 years working in government, fighting for New Mexicans and New Mexico values. Most recently worked for President Obama at the Interior Department fighting climate change. Had the fortune of working for U.S. Senator Jeff Bingaman in his Washington, D.C. office. Worked for then Representative Martin Heinrich in his House of Representatives office. Worked on passing the Affordable Care Act. And I've worked in every branch of state government. And if I can borrow a line from the Lieutenant Governor, he was stressing at the beginning of the call how Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's previous experience as a cabinet secretary and as a member of Congress has served her well in hitting the ground running in what she's doing now and serving our state as governor. I tell you that my experience as well will help me hit the ground running to fight climate change, take on the NRA, and tackle healthcare. And I look forward to talking with you more about it tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you all very much. So our first question of the evening, which will be answered by Valerie Plame, and then alphabetically in order by everyone else, and we ask for 1 minute each, pertains to economic diversity, right? So New Mexico is very much an oil and gas state. In the past couple of years, we've seen a very high source of our state revenue. In fact, some of the largest revenue we've seen in years coming from oil and gas. And now we're faced with the crisis of COVID-19 and also increased production by Saudi Arabia and Russia, leading to a drastic drop in gas prices, which directly affects our state budget. And the northwestern corner of the state is very much a gas and oil producer and contributes a lot of money to our state budget. At the same time, another one of our major industries here in northern New Mexico and CD3 is tourism, which rises and falls along with the gas prices, and of course is non-existent right now due to COVID-19. Take a minute to please talk about what you would do in Congress to help provide for resources to diversify our state's and our region's economy, so we could better weather the ups and downs of oil and other crises that come our way. Ms. Plame, you have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you, Darien. Right, how many years have we been hearing we need to diversify New Mexico's economy? And it's only been in the last few years, thanks to the leadership of Governor Lujan Grisham and Lieutenant Governor Morales, that we actually have seen those steps in that right direction, whether it's bringing in entrepreneurial small tech work startups, or Amazon, the entertainment business that goes beyond just oil and gas and the federal government. But we are in unprecedented times, as we all understand, and just getting through this, what is going to be on the other side? As your next Congresswoman, what I would emphasize above all else would be education, education, education. To me, that is the foundation of everything else. And a corollary to that is making it possible. My kids, my college-age kids, are home now from college, supposedly learning online. But we know in many places in New Mexico, that's really not a possibility because broadband access and quality is so poor. So you need a loud voice who's going to fight for New Mexicans to get these things in place. And boy, over the next year, as we fight to rebuild our economy, that's going to be more important than ever before.
Thank you. And my apologies, Laura Montoya should have answered that question first. So you can answer it next, or you can take first on the question after if you want, Laura. And my apologies for that little snafu.
Not a problem. So when we talk about the economy, there's a lot of different aspects we need to look at. Not just the local level where you're talking about oil and gas and diversification within New Mexico. We need within a couple of things that I really want to take a look at and analyze, and I know some people are going to be very frustrated with me saying this, but working as a county treasurer, we're looking at gross receipts tax that has really been struggling as much as oil and gas for the percentage that goes to the state for education. Gross receipts tax helps our and they're 2 months lagging. So our fiscal year for next year is the one that's really going to be impacted right around July. I think what we need to look at is diversification of solar and wind. We need to start looking at how we value New Mexico. So being that we have solar and wind as 3 and 5, we should utilize that. We also need to focus on the trades as part of an educational tool. Now that figuring out different ways to teach people through our internet, of course, broadband needs to be a priority because that helps not just with business, but with education and economic development. The second part I would mention in that is that diversification of your economy is critical in keeping it standing. It's just like when you're investing money. One of the things that I would like us to analyze is whether or not we should have gross receipts tax on food, because had we done that right now, I think that would have really assisted us overall in New Mexico so that we wouldn't be such in a bad predicament right now as we're not getting our gross receipts tax from other resources.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sanchez.
So as a state rep, I passed House Memorial 9, which was the Renewable Energy Investment Strategic Plan. Basically, that calls on the State Investment Council to start investing some of the billions of dollars we have in our land, in our funds, into renewable projects right here in New Mexico. So I'm already doing what we're talking about. I'm calling for investment in New Mexico and New Mexico investing in itself, specifically in renewables. We also got to look at recreation. I know in Taos County, skiing, mountain biking are huge things. Camping, hiking, outdoor recreation is huge. But we also need to bring more business. And how do we do that? We need to improve our schools. So we need to improve our schools. We need to improve infrastructure. We need to make sure we get a good census count. That's a thing that a lot of companies look at when they decide whether or not they're going to go into a location. They look at how many people are there. We got to improve and support our local schools like UNM Taos, Luna Community College, Northern College. These are all places that we need to develop our workforces so that they have the workforce to hire when we bring in these companies. So those are a few things. And like I mentioned, as state rep, I'm already pushing legislation to bring that in. And that House Memorial 9 was huge. A lot of people in Taos were really excited about it. We got that through. And the State Investment Council was there during all the hearings, and they took note, and they're going to really look at starting to invest. So I think that was a huge thing, getting that passed to the House of Representatives.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Cerna.
You heard me say broadband, broadband, broadband. Well, I'll say it again. Broadband, broadband, broadband. We need to make sure that we have broadband throughout the state. Kit Carson Co-op there in Taos is a perfect example. of what that investment can produce. So that first and foremost. The rest of our infrastructure, roads, water, that's what we need to attract larger businesses into New Mexico. In addition to that, education. We need to expand the curriculum not only to trades, but to solar and wind. We have a vast landscape there on the east side of the state. If you drive from Clovis to Amarillo, once you pass the state line, there's 70 miles of thousands of wind turbines. Texas is a lead producer of wind. Why are we not one of the lead producers of wind? In addition, solar. We're second to Arizona with sun every day, days of sun, excuse me. We could be a lead producer of both. We can educate our people here in New Mexico and rural New Mexico specifically to produce it, to install it. These are viable jobs that will last. And we address the oil and gas issue. We have pigeonholed ourselves into the oil and gas issue. So you mentioned, what can somebody do in Congress? You can have somebody who's willing to go against the grain a little bit to address the issues that matter to New Mexico. For instance, the Green New Deal. That's why I can't support it as is right now, because it doesn't protect New Mexico's economy. It would devastate New Mexico's economy. That's why we have a great governor and legislatures who passed a bill 2 years ago to address that very issue and extend that time for 30 years to allow us to take a responsible approach to bringing in green new technologies and ushering out old fossil fuel technologies. So we have to be, one, responsible. We have to be smart about it, but we have to educate our people, and we have to put an investment in ensuring that we become the lead producers for this country in renewable energies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cerna. Mr. Tisdall.
Yeah, I mean, we are not going to solve this problem by burying our heads in the sand. It is critical that we decouple our state from the fossil fuel industry, not only to align ourselves with the timeline of the climate crisis, but because our state economy and our state budget has literally been tied to the price of oil for generations. And the current price collapse should teach us that we cannot make progress as a state if we don't have a pathway to getting ourselves off of oil and gas. And that starts with holding industry accountable for a legacy of pollution and the impacts on communities. And for far too long, we look at the revenues from the oil and gas industries with dollar signs in our eyes, but we don't think about the back end and the legacy of pollution that is on our landscapes, which will cost tens of billions of dollars to clean up if we do not hold the oil and gas industry accountable. Again, we have a very narrow window in which to accomplish that, and there is going to be no one-to-one revenue replacement for oil and gas. But what it is going to take is the diversification of our economy and looking to the variety of opportunities that exist, one of which is to be leaders in renewable energy. But I've worked with Dene communities on the Energy Transition Act and San Juan generating stations abandonment. And we worked with an economist there, and diversifying the economy in oil and gas boom and bust areas is incompatible with fossil fuel development. So there can be win-wins if we are able to make that transition. We can put oil and gas field workers to work plugging, abandoning, and reclaiming our landscapes, but we cannot do that if we don't honestly hold industry accountable and take a real hard look at how we do this and have a plan in which to make that transition possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tisdall. Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would start by saying I think that we as New Mexicans have to think differently about how we're going to change our economy. There's no one thing, there's no magic bullet, if you'll pardon the expression, that's going to change the economy out of a fossil fuel reliant industry. It's going to take tens of different things that we do at the federal level, the state level, and the local level to wean us off of being so dependent upon fossil fuels. One of the first things we absolutely could do at the congressional level is to incentivize the renewable energy industry the way we've done the fossil fuel industry for decades. The federal government spends tens of billions of dollars every year incentivizing fossil fuels. Let's redirect that money towards renewable energy. You know, I think that we're in a place that there is such a role here for federal support to step in to help as we transition from a 20th century economy into a 21st century economy. There is a role for the Congress to ensure that people who've been working at the San Juan generating station, for example, are being paid while they're being trained to work in a new industry. Maybe that's renewable energy, maybe that's in some sort of remediation or mitigation to clean up the mines around us. But the point that was made is that the federal government really can help sustain while we make that transition, and that's what we need to step up and do. Beyond that, to everyone's point, there is a real opportunity to really invest in tourism more than we do now. You know, when I worked for President Obama, he created 26 new national monuments across the country, 2 in New Mexico. And the communities around a national monument like the Rio Grande del Norte sees real, tangible, significant increases in people traveling, not from across the state, but from across the country, putting their dollars into our economy, and we need to do a lot more of that.
Okay, thank you very much. So I heard a lot about tourism. And we heard about what's that?
Yeah, one more person.
I need to answer the question.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry, Teresa. All right.
Oh. See, that's the thing, is you need a congresswoman who's going to speak up. And that's, I'm not going to let you not let me speak. It's my turn to ask. So I think I want to start it with this, is that I am on the record as being for the Green New Deal. And the reason is because the Green New Deal asks this question. It asks the question of, how do we solve this crisis? And it is a crisis. It's a crisis that is not going to be temporary the way this pandemic is temporary. It is going to be a permanent crisis. And the Green New Deal says, how do we solve this crisis and at the same time seek opportunities? And that's what I am for, is the idea that we ask, how do we solve this climate crisis and move away from fossil fuels and instead create opportunities for the communities that have been impacted by the fossil fuels, whether that be their health or their economy. And so the question is, what can the federal government do? What will I do as the Congresswoman? And the things I will do is support the kind of legislation that says the same way that we need to fund our hospitals and our state governments and our small businesses to deal with this crisis of the pandemic, we need to fund those communities that have been most dependent upon providing their energy for the country, and that is New Mexico. So while we have been this dependent country, yes, this dependent area of a fossil fuel economy, we also then need the federal government to say, we thank you for this work and this sacrifice, and we are going to put the money into those economies and to train, to invest. And there is a bill that I would be a co-sponsor of that would do that with significant monies. And that's what the Green New Deal is talking about, is saying, what is our obligation as we move out of this crisis into a new one? I would also say that there's a marvelous Brookings Institution paper that says Congress should put $10 billion a year into creating new technology hubs. And New Mexico, they talk about triangles, but what I really want to do is a diamond that connects our northern New Mexico, our Santa Fe, our labs in Albuquerque, our research universities in Albuquerque, and then our marvelous university that's unfortunately not in our district, but we love everything in the state, that is the New Mexico Tech. So that we create this technology hub in New Mexico, because we have what it takes. We have really smart scientists here. We have smart kids who are going to our community college and going to New Mexico Tech. We have beautiful place to live, so our kids don't need to leave. But also, who wants to live where it costs $1 million to live in a small little place in the San Francisco? We can be that alternative. And so that's the kind of thing we're creating new technology hub here. And then, like John Blair, I truly believe I was Obama's vice chair on the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, which is in charge of making sure that those beautiful cultural sites, like the UNESCO site that is Taos Pueblo and Chaco, preserving those so that not just those sites, but our beautiful public lands are utilized and preserved, and that we do not destroy them for like we have now, right? There's way too much drilling on our public lands, but they're preserved for that kind of environmental ecotourism that we could do. And I echo everything else about education. Education is the crux that will be important as we move into this. And I think I'm the only one of the candidates that's actually worked in building broadband. Maybe Joseph has as well, but of building broadband and bringing broadband to communities that don't have it. So I've faced how difficult it is to get that done. And, you know, I have done about $900 million worth of building things in New Mexico, including broadband, including businesses. So it's that knowledge of where that money is in those agencies that I will bring when I go to Congress to say, these are the resources we need to deploy in New Mexico, asking the question, is this going to hurt, like for the climate crisis, or is this going to help and create opportunities? And so that's how I'm going to look at everything. Is this going to help create opportunities for New Mexico as we move into the 21st century?
Okay, thank you very much. We'll have a quick question now about education, and hopefully you've all done your homework on this. How much more money does our New Mexico education system need? And how would you break up that money in terms of what goes to early childhood, what goes to standard K through 12, what goes to higher ed, and what goes to adult education for people who choose to seek high school equivalency or more of a trade path? And I'll let Laura Montoya go first since I missed her on the last one.
I'm so sorry, but the internet
30
went
seconds
out.
each.
The internet went out, so I only know the question's education, and that's all I heard. Can you repeat it?
It's education, and specifically, how much more money does New Mexico need, and how do you break that up between early childhood, K through 12, higher ed, and adult learning? 30 seconds.
So I support K through 12 and higher ed. I don't know specifically the breakdown of the percentages that are currently in there right now and what the increase needs to be, but I will tell you that every child should be able to go to school, K through 12. There should also be within school arts, home ec, the trades starting in the high school, music. Instead of having to only be able to afford an instrument, every child who wants to be in band should be able to be in band. I think the arts are a wonderful way of help a lot of children to learn and to think outside of the box. As far as higher ed, I think that there should be two pathways. You should be able to go into the trades, and there should be at least a 90% stimulus package to where it helps to fund that while they're going through their trade expertise. And they should also be able to four years and my master's in and I'm off my student. So I think it's very important that school is affordable and that people don't have to work 3 jobs to make ends meet to go to school at the same time, that there should be a pathway for us to be able to assist people that want to take on that opportunity and for us to be able to help us to increase the economy, decrease crime, and improve our overall state.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Plame, and I want to remind everyone 30 seconds.
Thanks. Yes, I think it's absolutely immoral that New Mexico is 49th in the nation in child well-being. Given that the years that I spent working with the United Way of Santa Fe County, I have to say my bias is toward early childhood education. And I thought that long before it became in vogue nationwide. You start there to lay that foundation and put that investment in. The return on investment yield is far greater than anywhere else down the line. Education, as I said in a previous question, is absolutely crucial. But for my money, where you want to put the best investment, as your next Congresswoman, I would support all that goes into early childhood education for New Mexicans.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sanchez.
So as a state rep and vice chair of the Appropriations Committee, I was part of the budget process where we increased our budgets for our education system dramatically. We focused on early childhood education, higher education. I think it's not just about we need to think about our teachers too. We're not paying them enough. And also we need to take a community school approach also. I know a lot of kids, they're getting raised by their grandparents. Their parents are on drugs or addicted to something. We need to provide social workers at our schools that are gonna help identify those red flags, that are gonna help set them on the right track. And I think that's something that we're going towards now as a state. And I think we're headed in the right direction. And I think we just gotta continue supporting those types of initiatives where we make sure our kids don't fall through the cracks. The Yazzie Martinez case, I know that really emphasized on our Native Americans and Hispanics, that their communities are being underserved. We need to make sure they get the same quality education as other communities. So that's one of the big things. We need to make sure everyone gets a quality education, and I would push for that, and I have pushed for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Cerna.
How great would it be if we spent as much on education as we do on our armed forces? Then we wouldn't even have a problem of how much do we divvy up for each. We would have it for early childhood education, for elementary, K through 12, whatever, even our colleges. I saw a documentary that was really frustrating to watch because it was based out of California, and it had people on scholarship and people on student loans who were actually homeless because they couldn't afford to live in the area that their college was, or they couldn't afford to pay for books. They had to live out of their cars, which is completely unacceptable. We need to, as a nation, not only a state, ensure that we fund education to as much as we possibly can to ensure that people are getting that education they need. They're not living in their cars in college, but also with their earlyhood education, let's start there. Let's really focus on creating that structure for individuals and then move on through as we go up. We have to ensure that we get more curriculum, the trades, ensure that we have apprenticeships. I mean, we can really expand the box on this one, but we also have to work on services other than education, because we have children who are going to school hungry. You can't learn if you're not eating. So we need to make sure we have programs that they're fed, that they're properly clothed. There's so much more. And I'm sorry I went over 30 seconds, but it really is a great question and a big issue for our state especially.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Tisdall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it obviously starts, there's a connection with the previous question that you asked, which is how you diversify our state. And you would diversify our economy by investing in education, by investing in our children. And, you know, Marco was right, you know, we need to invest we always can find money if we want to fight the next war. But we suddenly need to balance budget whenever it comes to taking care of our kids or expanding our economy and providing services. So, you know, the federal government, I think there needs to be a just transition for states like New Mexico that have been tied to the fossil fuel industry. And that investment needs to go into expanded early childhood education, pre-K as well as daycare funding, as well as expanding to, higher education as well, which would include public university, community colleges, as well as trade schools. We need to be investing in training our younger generations for the economy of tomorrow. And we aren't going to develop that economy if we aren't investing. And then the other thing I'll say just before I get off is that also the distribution of those funds makes a huge difference. And we can't just rely on tax bases alone to distribute those funding because it leaves a lot of our most vulnerable communities still lacking those services. So the distribution of funding is also critically important.
Okay, thank you. We'll have Teresa go next, followed by Mr. Blair.
In terms of answering the question? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Lieutenant Governor Morales will recall that I've been in his office on education issues related to the Yazzie v. Martinez case, because we were trying to say we need more funding for these children and our poorest communities. So I know that our budget, our education budget is around $3 billion, but that we wanted, it's more than that, but I don't know the exact number, but that we did want to have significant more funding, because what the Yazzie case said was we are not educating our children enough. We must, it's like we are violating New Mexico's constitution because we're not educating our children. That's a huge indictment. But the great thing is that this governor and this administration said, we are not going to fight that court case. We are going to acknowledge it. Our problem is we haven't quite, we haven't funded what we need to do yet. And my concern is that with this new budget, that the state's going to have to look at, that we're not going to have what we need. That we really were looking at saying we need to be closer to our $4 billion budget, because we need to do the structural changes that would mean that you are both educating the educators, that you are getting the early childhood education, I'm a Head Start baby, I love early childhood education, but that you are also doing the vocational. We are going to be one of us is going to be a congressperson. And what that question, I think, says is, what should the federal government do to supplement what the state is doing? So that's how I would like to answer that question. And in that way, the federal government doesn't spend as much in the state as the state does, but what the federal government does do is key. And what I would like the federal government to do is to match what we're trying to do in early childhood education and meet us. So the governor's desire to make higher education, whether that be vocational, community, with the unions, that it be free, that the federal government come in and with the Pell Grants and with increased funding, and so that our students don't need to take on too much debt. That's what the federal government should do, is come in both at the early end, at the upper end, and then just give more and decide what they need to do.
This is making no sense.
Cool. Thank you. Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I think there's no question we need to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars in New Mexico alone to really get us to genuinely meet that societal promise that every child, regardless of their income or the parents' income or their zip code, that they're able to get a quality education in New Mexico. And every level of education needs additional funding and support, both for the students, for the teachers, and the administrators. I do believe we need to be investing more in early childhood education, because what we're finding is that when students are coming into kindergarten and first grade and second grade, there are the haves and the have-nots, and we need to level that playing field so that every child has the ability to succeed and to go on to the next grading level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next question. This is a simple yes/no answer, and we'll start with Mr. Sanchez. Do you support expanded plutonium pit production at Los Alamos National Laboratory?
Yes or no?
Yes or no?
What's existing right now? I don't know. That's not a yes or no, but I support what's there now.
Okay, Mr. Cerna.
Yes.
Okay, Kyle.
No.
Okay, Mr. Blair.
Yes, with greater oversight and environmental protections.
Okay, Ms. Teresa Leisure Fernandez.
Yes, but as we always need that environmental and the worker protection that we need up there. So environmental and worker protections.
Okay, Laura. Okay, we appear to be having technical difficulties. We can have Laura come back and answer this question later. And what we'll do in addition is...
maybe if her phone is working, you can maybe text her the questions, because we've been able to hear her.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. And we'll also send all of you the list of questions so you can provide your answers in the same format, but so we can get the answer out to everyone who's watching tonight. So Laura, if you can't get on at the moment, I can hear you now.
Okay,
yep,
perfect.
I can hear you.
So my answer was, I don't support the fact that they brought $15 billion in and not have the same amount of and there's no accountability.
Okay, thank you. Valerie.
No, I do not support increase plutonium pit production. I believe our national security does not need it. There are far other ways to use the national lab to make sure that the economic growth and monies that it comes into the state, but not through greater production of nuclear weapons.
Okay, thank you. Next question. This is also a very short answer. And it is, so in Congress, right, a lot of the work is done in committees. One word answer, please, or if the committee by some means has 3 or 4 words in its title, you can use that. Don't go over though, please, because we need to get on to the next round. But what committee would be your preferred committee in Congress? Mr. Cerna.
So do I get just one or a couple, just the one?
Yeah, what's your top committee?
House Appropriations.
House Appropriations. Okay, Tisdale.
Natural resources.
Alrighty, Blair.
Energy and Commerce or Appropriations?
Leisure Fernandez.
Ways and Means.
Laura Montoya.
Ways and Means and Veterans
All right.
Committee.
Ms. Plame.
House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence.
That figures. All right, Mr. Sanchez.
As the Vice Chair of Appropriations in the House, Appropriations and Energy as an electrical engineer.
Okay, so now that you've all chosen your committees, we are facing, we're looking at a new deal for northern New Mexico, right? We're talking about how we can come out of this COVID-19 crisis, put people back to work, invest in all of those things that we've talked about. You all now have 10 minutes to discuss amongst each other with some gentle prodding from time to time to make sure that everyone gets basically the same amount of time to speak, what that new deal for northern New Mexico is going to look like. And you have 10 minutes starting now. Have at it.
So this is a new deal just in general.
It's a new deal for northern New Mexico. This is post-COVID. How do we get out of this? How do we get people to work? Is it safe? What does it look like for northern New Mexico? And you're now in a committee meeting and you're eating up your time by asking these questions. So,
Sorry, I think we can all agree. I think we can all agree that we need to ensure that we protect our small business economy. We need to ensure that all the people who've been fired don't lose their homes, that they're protected as well, because without them, we don't have an economy. So I'll put that out there just to begin with.
And I agree with that. We got to really invest in our small business. A lot of the people that have gone to lose their jobs work at these small business. And you see with the numbers of the unemployment rates, we definitely got to invest in small business so we can put those people back to work. They're the heartbeat of our country and of our state.
What I heard all of us agree on was the need for education and embracing that at early childhood and all the way through, and the corollary to that, the infrastructure, which would be broadband. And that's a place where I heard that there's no disagreement among us. It's how do we build on that? And that's where I would begin for the next chapter once we get through this pandemic.
So one of the things that I think we all also recognize is that there needs to be very complete structural change, that this pandemic has highlighted the fissures, they're huge gaping holes in the way we work. So the idea of having employer-based insurance means that all those people who've lost their jobs no longer have insurance. We need to make sure we do that. The Ways and Means Committee would be one of the ways in which we would say we need a new tax system that makes a more equitable distribution of calling on those who have more means, so that we have a tax structure that does not punish the people who do not make as much money, but rather says we must have an equitable, fair tax structure that taxes those who are the ultra wealthy, as we have seen with some of the cuts, and allowing that then to come in and shore up our health industry, and not our health industry, but how we get health to our community. And I think that we would be looking at the Ways and Means community to be able to get those taxes in, to be able to fund some of the health needs and the restructuring of our health system and delivery of care.
So I think coming out of this crisis, we need to ensure that we are better prepared for the next crisis. And the biggest crisis that we're going to face in our lifetime is the climate crisis. And so we need to use this as an opportunity to jumpstart a clean energy economy, which would include the managed decline of the fossil fuel industry. It would include investment in making sure that people can make that transition by having health coverage, by having education, by having labor laws that are in place that allows that transition to occur. And we should have a New Deal era type of investment in infrastructure to allow the technological transformation and to jumpstart a decarbonization on a scale in this country.
What I love about what you say, Kyle, is that you come from it with a reasonable approach, it sounds. And that's what we need to do, is be reasonable and responsible in how we approach that sort of jumpstart, as you talk about, and ensuring that New Mexico's economy is protected with regard to healthcare. Rural New Mexicans don't have appropriate healthcare as is right now. I mean, look at our Navajo Nation, our brothers and sisters on the Navajo Nation, who have been forgotten, according to their president and vice president, by our current administration. So we also need to ensure that we all work together to get people like President Biden in there to have reasonable minds in the White House to ensure that we are prepared for not only the next pandemic, but the next crisis. Because as we all know, it's not if, it's when.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Blair.
So a couple.
Mr. Chairman, I would offer that I think one of the first things we have to do is we have to stop thinking about these as two separate crises. The economic crisis and the health crisis that we're in are commingled. They directly lead in a cycle back and forth to each other. So
And
we have to be thinking that it's the necessary time to ensure that we are past the peak of this crisis before unnecessarily throwing people back to work. But there really is an extraordinary opportunity here for us, in the way that President Roosevelt did during the Great Depression, to put New Mexicans back to work by rebuilding our roads, rebuilding our dams. We need a modern grid system to allow for the demands of and so there is such an opportunity for the federal government to lead the way in providing those opportunities for New Mexicans, because that's immediate.
So I think a couple of things that weren't mentioned that I think are really important is the EPA and more accountability, the waters of the U.S., protecting our acequias and all of our water, our small businesses, making sure that we can get stimulus packages that are actually going to be meaningful for them to get to the people that really need them, instead of saying it's a first come, first served basis. Broadband was mentioned. Farmers and ranchers are definitely a group that people haven't been really focused on, but yet they are who have kept us going. We've also learned who our real essential workers are, and those people need to be compensated for that. We need to continue to have secure rural schools funding and payment of taxes funding, and not be something that we beg for every year, but part of our annual budget. And the most important aspect that I've been learning through relations in my county is that the intergovernmental relations is so challenging right now. The lack of communication, the lack of access and resources that you have to go through between local government, state government, federal, and tribal has been so challenging that people who are on the ground that don't have water, literally don't have water for their, are having to wait until people can all get along and agree on being able to have access to get there. And the last one would be our labs and our military bases, and making sure that they are fully funded and utilizing them in a reliable way that's going to help our communities, including crises like COVID, and being able to protect us.
Thank you. To prod this along a little bit, we've seen disproportionate numbers of COVID-19 cases on our Native American reservations, and if we're talking about the miscommunication between intergovernmental agencies, let's also spend a minute talking about what that means for sovereign relationships between our tribes and the federal government, and what type of a response does that look like in all of your opinions?
They deserve the same response.
As you know, So as you know, I have worked with tribal governments for the last 30 years. So tribal sovereignty and self-determination is something I know really well. And I think that one of the issues that we've seen is in those places, the way it should work is that we haven't fully funded our Indian Health Service. So the places that should be taken care of our Native American communities are not fully funded. So they don't have the means and they don't have the coverage to be able to address all of the needs out in the community. But that the other thing that, once again, Lieutenant Governor Morales and this administration knows very well is that the tribes are very willing to enter into agreements with the states and with their local governments, with their counties, and where that has happened, you have very good response. But the federal government has a trust obligation. It is called a trust obligation. That means that they have said, in exchange for all the land that we have taken, we promise that we will provide education, and we promise that we will provide health care. And that is what that trust obligation is, and they have failed. They have failed. There are treaties after treaties after treaties that the United States has broken and failed. And so one of the things that I think is key in this district that has almost 20% of the district is Native American, close to 20%, is somebody who understands that. And what it looks like is it looks like basically respect. I think it comes down to that key word is respect. And when you can work with governments, then that's what you work. John?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I apologize. Are you done? Oh. I just was going to say, I mean, I think what we're seeing right now, particularly with regard to the Navajo Nation, is that there's all this extra bureaucratic red tape that the tribe is having to go through that counties and cities and municipalities aren't having to go through. And that's the same sort of problems that I saw when I worked for Mr. Heinrich in the House of Representatives and for President Obama, is that time and again, we have a different set of rules for the tribes that just complicate our ability to be assisting them in times like this. And so we need to clear out that red tape and make it as seamless to get them the funds they need for Indian Health Service, for any other sort of support that we're giving them, but it needs to be happening faster and cleaner.
If I may add,
Clearly, you know, it's
what John said, just in today's news, 30% of New Mexico's COVID-19 cases are on the Navajo Nation. And clearly that's due in part because already their health is compromised. We know that. And I would second what John says about the bureaucratic red tape. You see that a lot with what Congresswoman Deb Haaland has focused on, missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. As it turns out, there's all kinds of files, but they are not, the feds are not speaking to the state, who wasn't speaking to the tribe. And you need someone to get in there and basically, with respect, clear away that red tape so that we do have much better communication and 911 calls work, the better infrastructure that you can, that they have better training on the tribal lands. And we, as Teresa said, for sure, we have fallen way short of the promises made to our tribal brothers and sisters over the centuries.
As I was saying when this first started, it all has to be, everybody needs the same services. Whether you're and I agree with everybody who's spoken that we need to eliminate the red tape, as John had indicated, because in times like these, in crises like these, we shouldn't have to go through that. There should be safeguards already in place to address these types of issues, so we don't have the Navajo Nation at 30%, as was just mentioned with regard to New Mexico's entire COVID infected in New Mexico. That's just unacceptable. This is our community, and they're our community. Everybody in Mexico, they're our community members. So we need to make sure that everybody is treated the same with this. They're all given the same resources. So with that, I agree with everybody.
So there's a couple things I need to mention right now. So in Sandoval County, we have 12 Indian reservations that I have built relationships with. Today we have 5 8 counties have the highest number of COVID cases going on right now. Zia Pueblo, which is literally 5 minutes from my house, has one of the amount of population in there. We just finished taking tons of flour, like simple things that everybody needed, flour and beans and water, And that was only because of the fact that we had built relationships already. Had we gone this longer. In Torreon, which is a Navajo chapter, very uniquely different. They are struggling right now, focused on Arizona instead of New Mexico. Yet our unions are struggling in San Juan and McKinley because we have union workers that have to come that are native also into McKinley and San Juan County, and they're trying to figure out how to minimize the caseload and follow the governor's rules of going between states and keeping the 14 days internal. So in Torreon, they didn't have water, guys. Water, simple water. We had to get a tanker from the San Luis Water Association. Joey Dominguez had to work with the state agencies, and then we had to ask for the Navajo Nation's curfew. We had to actually ask the volunteer fire J. Trujillo to take it in and then process it through the weekend. Our Emergency Operation Command Center, which I have direct communication with, was not able to assist us at all because they have to follow the proper chain of command like the military. So as everyone's trying to go through these processes, real people are struggling with even being able to drink. I'm very passionate about the idea that we need to work better on all of these relationships. We've had great partnerships throughout. We've given county vehicles to some of our pueblos in the past, and we have intergovernmental relations with fire and EMT. But when it came down to COVID cases and the emergency that we have with multiple families that live together and they're all getting sick, and we could lose the history of people that know the traditions and the culture, that's more than a crisis that we're working on right now. So definitely an issue New Mexicans need to work on and improve.
Kyle, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah. You know, I think what we're finding is that COVID-19 is not discriminating in who it infects, but it is disproportionately impacting those that are the most vulnerable folks in our society. These are the folks that were already living at the margins, who were least able to adapt to any sort of change, any sort of impact that they were experiencing. So when you look, whether it's African-American communities in Detroit, or whether it is our Navajo Nation or Pueblo communities here in New Mexico, the outsized impact that these folks are feeling is a direct result of the systems that have been in place that have entrenched that type of inequity for generations. And when you look at the Navajo Nation, this is a place that is the size of West Virginia and has 4 grocery stores and 40% of the people on the nation who do not have running water. So when you have orders that are saying, wash your hands, well, they're trucking their water in and they're running out of water. And these are also communities that have come to depend on each other to survive. And naturally, they're not going to be able to deal with social distancing like the more advantaged folks in society can deal with. And so coming out in the midst and coming out of this crisis, we need to ensure that we improve the safety net, that we improve the way that government takes care of people and it addresses the fundamental inequities that exist in our society. And that's what this crisis is really showing us.
Okay, so when do we decide that it's time to start easing up on some of these?
Mr. Chair, I think Joseph wanted to make one point.
Go for it, Mr. Sanchez.
So real quick, I think the other candidates will attest. I've been bringing up the Navajo Nation for the last year. Every forum we go to, the lack of running drinking water, the lack of running electricity. They don't have electricity. They don't have running water. They've been left behind in these issues, and now they're being left behind in this issue. And what we lack is somebody to go be a champion for them. I know our delegation has done a good job, but we need to really emphasize that these people need more help. We live here in the United States of America, and these people don't have running water or electricity. That's a joke. Like, somebody needs to really make a point about this at Congress and get some major funding so we get these people the necessities they have, much less now with this whole issue going on, ventilators and stuff, and these people are just getting left behind. So
okay. So I'm hearing broad support for infrastructure projects like water on the Navajo Nation and broadband throughout the entire district, as we can tell is needed everywhere. When do we go back to normal? When do we start easing up on some of these social distancing restrictions, and what does that normalization looks like before we start getting into a couple of audience questions?
So hopefully we don't go back to normal, right? Hopefully we use this opportunity as a springboard to the type of foundational change that we need to see. In terms of how we start to interact again and not be in a sort of social distancing situation, I think that there are measures that we can do to track who has gotten the virus, who has recovered from the virus, and allow those folks to enter into the workforce perhaps sooner than those who have not yet been infected. We need to make sure that there are safe controls over nursing homes and the most vulnerable populations. And we need to also be having wide-scale testing so that we know and we can calibrate that sort of throttling effect between increasing interactions again with one another, God willing that will come, but also be able to impose additional measures to stay at home when it looks like our healthcare infrastructure is starting to be stressed by that. But I don't think we should go back to normal because normal wasn't working.
So I agree with the concept that
This is the perfect time to reboot ourselves.
Laura?
The perfect opportunity to have us all look at a different way of how we work, how we review policies, who we think of as essential workers, how do we help our labs and our military base to be more impactful, not only in New Mexico, but in the world. This is a great time for us to refocus our lives on how we take care of each other, where we're lacking, what we can improve. So I'm looking forward to the governor who have done an excellent job in this process.
So one of the things that I agree with the idea that the new normal, actually though, what I want to do is make sure that it's, how does the saying go? It's like how you end the war, the peace depends, what happens afterwards is most important, right? And we know that World War I wasn't ended well, but World War II was, because World War II came with the Marshall Plan, with investments, and we saw a lot of peace after that. That's what we need to do here. And the investments we need to look at, the new normal is that paid family medical leave is permanent, it's not temporary, that we restructure the way in which people get health care so that we do not have a situation where people are worried about going and getting tested or paying for the cost of the treatment. Right now, the way our healthcare system is not everybody can get free testing. Immigrants, and some of our DACA are wonderful dreamers, and many of the people who are putting the food on, in the trucks to get to us are not able to get free testing. That is not right. So we can't get back to something where we're not social distancing if we don't make sure that everybody is being cared for in this entire society, whether they are picking our food or whether they're delivering our food through dashing delivery or at the grocery store. So we need to restructure. I agree complete with Kyle and Laura that we need to restructure how we organize and how we take care of each other. But we are more than that. We are at our core, we love being together. That is who we are as community. And so, but when we get to do that, we have to listen to the experts. And we need to get to a point where experts matter and that where we pay attention to them. And that's the wonderful thing. I agree with you, Laura, that in leadership matters. And we saw that here in New Mexico, and I'm very grateful for our governor and lieutenant governor, our amazing administration here.
I would agree, Darien, I would agree with Teresa. Leadership does matter. None of us here are public health experts, and it's high time that science and fact-based decision-making be put front and center. I absolutely agree with everyone's expressed sentiments that the silver lining in all of this very difficult period is how we shift the paradigm going forward. And what you want in a representative in Washington is someone who is tried and tested, calm, cool, collected leadership. I've been through my share of some crisis management moments, and you want to make sure that your representative, as New Mexico, the nation, and the world pulls out in the months and years ahead of this crisis, that we are better for it.
I think one thing that we can all take from this situation is how well communities have come together to support each other. Laura mentioned that they were taking water and essentials like beans and flour to individuals. And that's really, as a community member, I think we all recognize what that's done for individuals who actually need it. And we need to see more of that. In addition to what everybody said, but just to add to what everybody said, we need to make sure that after this, we are strong community members in ensuring that we're there to help each other when we need the help. So again, I echo what everybody said, because these are all great, but our first responders, we need to make sure that we're protecting them and that they're getting the services they provide, because as we've seen on Facebook, you know, you're seeing nurses and EMTs with actual bruising right around their eyes because those masks are uncomfortable. I've been to the store and I wear my mask and it is uncomfortable, but I only have to wear it for 30 minutes at, you know, tops. So we need to ensure that we continue to work on what this has taught us. And Kyle, I think you said it perfectly from the start, is we use this as a platform to jump off of, or a jumping board. I forget exactly what you said, but I think you really hit the nail on the head with that one.
Mr. Chairman, I would add that I actually worked in the House of Representatives for Mr. Heinrich when the Congress passed the Recovery Act. That was at the end of the recession, the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, and saw firsthand what it takes to really provide for the entire country in terms of digging out of a crisis. And I think that we have to be guided in our decisions now on science and facts, not rumors or partisan politics or conspiracy theories. And we have to act in a way that protects the most vulnerable Americans and New Mexicans, and not in a way that rewards the wealthiest CEOs and shareholders. We have to look out for those who are most in need. And we need to understand that when we start to go back to work, when the businesses start to open, it's not going to be like an on-off switch where all of a sudden everybody's back. It's likely going to be something that comes in waves based in science. It will likely start with small businesses, grocery stores, and it will work its way out to larger institutions like movie theaters, concert venues, things like that. So we have to make sure that we are looking out for the most vulnerable, and that providing clear guidance to everyone to understand what are the next steps in reopening our economy.
Thank you.
I just
Mr. Sanchez?
I want to echo what everyone's saying. Things will never be the same. I think our country's going to learn from this experience. People are never going to act the same. We got to listen to our experts. Like everyone keeps saying, none of us have that background. And I think one of the strengths that this person that takes this position has to have is they have to be able to listen to these experts and make the best educated decision they can to make sure we protect the people, that we're not jumping the gun. We also have to keep in mind those first responders, our nurses, our EMTs, our firefighters, our doctors. But then we also have to keep in mind those grocery store workers, the people that work at Walgreens, the people that work at Walmart. We need to thank them for the way they're handling this. Nobody thanks them, but those people are providing groceries to us everyday people when we make it with our mask or make it to these places. So I just want to echo what everyone else was saying.
Cool. Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Lieutenant Governor Howie Morales if he would like to chime in on this particular part and just provide any insight that he might have on what it looks like for the state of New Mexico going forward, and maybe what plans our governor and the leadership team has.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and such wonderful dialogue as I'm listening. I'm learning a lot because there's a lot of different views and a lot of expertise within this panel. So I'm grateful for this opportunity in this listening session of what ideas may be out there. What we do know is that we don't have a playbook. We don't have a guide that tells us step A, step B, because we've never been through this before. What we do have is we have each other. And I'm excited to see that whatever's taking place, whether it's in the education side, whether it's in the business sector, whether it's in the healthcare side, is what we can continue to learn from that. So when we talk about things that may never go back the way that they were, I think that there's a lot that we can build on. And I just want to stress the fact that while we're talking about different solutions and different issues that we're dealing with, and a lot of times you'll hear us give a lot of data and a lot of numbers and a lot of that kind of information. I don't ever want to take away from the fact that what makes New Mexico special. And what makes New Mexico special is the people within it. And realizing that every person who is impacted by this virus in one way or another is a human being with a family and who has that impact. And we have to always keep that in mind in whatever area that we're working on. If it's a future congressional representation that we have from one of you, or if it's another sector that you're working on, that we never forget that human aspect. And we provide that opportunity for hope. And when we look and see what the answers are, whether it's our economy or any of those type of opportunities, that we never forget the importance of that human connection that we have. And I think that every single one of you have demonstrated that with your leadership and showing that it's not about sitting on top of the mountain, banging your chest, but rather helping people out and being there to serve. So again, it's just a wonderful opportunity for me to listen in and to learn from so many of you as you're sharing your views.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor, and thank you for staying on with us tonight. Thank you, all of you attendees, and thanks to all of our congressional candidates who are here. We have time for just a couple of audience questions, and while we open that up, I have just another very, very quick 1 or 2 word answer question that I'd like from all of you, and it is, of course, our state question, but with a caveat. Not only do I want to know whether you prefer red, green, or Christmas, I want to know what is your favorite restaurant in CD3 that serves you red, green, or Christmas? And we'll go with Kyle Tisdale first.
Well, I'm normally a green chili guy, but my favorite restaurant in the district, coming from Taos, would have to be Orlando's, and I always go with Orlando's red.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Blair.
The Shed's red chili and Tomasita's Wednesday special, the blue corn green.
Oh man, that's some throwing down. All right, Ms. Leisure Fernandez.
I'm a Christmas girl, except for in our tamales that my family makes. We do 24 dozen tamales, and we only do red in the tamales. And I must say, you know, because our tamales are so good, I don't know that there's anywhere else but the Ledger household for the best food.
All right, Ms. Montoya.
To go to a restaurant, it would be Rialto in Las Vegas and the Range in Bernalillo.
Okay, Ms. Plame.
Christmas all the way. Maria's here in Santa Fe. Although there's so many others, but you'll never be disappointed.
Mr. Sanchez.
For Angelina's, La Cocina, Big Dogs, and those are my favorite here in the Espanola Valley, and also Joanne's. Sorry, I go to those, I take turns, all 4 of them, so I can't pick just one.
All right, Mr. Serna.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, you're really putting us in a predicament here, I'll tell you what. So I'm going to just name 2. I'm going to say Parasol or Parawa in Espanola. And then for breakfast, I have to go with Tio Sophia's big chili breakfast burrito with egg, crispy bacon, if you must know.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Now it's time for some audience questions. And I'm asking audience members to type their questions in on the chat feature on Zoom. And all of you should be able to see it. So let's go to the first one. Can you address how you will serve the community members with disabilities? And Mr. Blair, start us off.
Great. Yeah. So, you know, my mom worked at state government for the New Mexico Commission for the Blind for 20-some years. And so I grew up working and living around the blind community. And so that was a real help to me to understand that we have to provide, that there are sometimes special needs that the communities have that can't be met from other traditional means. For example, there are concerns right now, particularly around people with disabilities and their ability to get to grocery stores or to get out to get the essential services that they need. And what are we able to do to provide transportation, to provide volunteer support or other means in which to help the community? And so both now and beyond, we have to ensure that all New Mexicans have a seat at the table and that we're making it a point to listen to anyone and that we are watching out for those with any disabilities.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fernandez.
So
Fernandez.
I think we need to fully fund some of the services that disabilities we need for access. As an example, we need to make sure that those with disabilities are able to vote in the upcoming election, but also when there is a crisis that they, as John mentioned, that they have access. And so there is important that we both always make sure that the laws that we pass are always thinking about how does this apply to somebody with disabilities and make sure that they have the same opportunities as everybody else.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Montoya.
So a couple of things that come to mind. Parking, I know back in the day, charge that you can have because it is so challenging when you're in a chair and having and not be able to because somebody parked in the disabled parking or handicap parking. School for the Blind, a lot of people forgot about this. We've been working on getting them some mask givers. You know, my cousin is deaf, so I learned how to sign since I was very young. So I love that the governor put somebody on there to be able to speak to people like my cousin who really need the information. I think that full funding needs to be required, but I think we also need to in schools that we should learn as a language to be able to speak and sign as one of the languages that are.
Okay. So parking, sign language. Ms. Plame.
Yes, I think what this district deserves and wants in their next congresswoman is someone who ensures that the laws on the books that address the disabilities are fully funded, fully implemented, and continue to push for expanded access across the board, because we are all in this together. If the last several weeks have taught us nothing, it's that we are one community on this tiny little blue marble spinning through space, and all members are community matter. So you want a congresswoman who's going to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and we have accessibility.
Mr. Sanchez.
So this was something near and dear to my heart as a state representative. I made sure that the School for the Deaf, School for the Blind got adequate funding. I know one of the big things is like put in and got funding for the Division of Vocational Rehabilitations. One thing with me, a lot of people don't know something about me is I'm blind from my left eye. I'm very fortunate to have a good, perfect vision in my right eye. So it's growing up like that, I don't have to deal with a lot. I have a small taste of what a lot of people with disabilities really deal with, and we got to make sure we enforce current laws to make sure that the building codes are enforced, to make sure there's adequate access, to make sure we fund programs that support people with disabilities. So as a congressman, I would ensure that we move forward and completely did that.
Thank you. Mr. Sarna.
I agree with what everybody said. We need to make sure that full funding is there. We need to ensure that grants are available for organizations like Life Roots, which I participated in recently, and actually invited all of my fellow candidates to throw a pie in my face. This organization actually provides funding for individuals with disabilities to provide them jobs. To their defense, I did send it out, I think, day before, so none of them partook. But we need to make sure that grants are available for those. And one thing that nobody's mentioned is we need to enforce laws on individuals who try to prevent access, to ensure that they are dealt with not only swiftly, but punitively, because those are the worst type of people who would try to prevent access with anybody with a disability. So in addition to funding expansion, we also need to ensure that those individuals who are trying to prevent people with disabilities from access or dealt with properly.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Tisdale.
Yeah, I mean, obviously access and opportunities and funding, all of these things are vitally important. But, I think something that impacts the community of the disabled is the sort of social prejudices and the subtle ways that society is not accepting of those with disabilities or those who sort of lack in some ways of sort of normal function in society. And so, how we change society, it's a tricky question, but it deals with, how we are caring for one another. The space and the patience that we provide in social settings for everyone is vitally important. And I think that is one of the most meaningful things that we can do is all check the way that we operate, and to, in our own interactions, make sure that we are creating space for other people, regardless of their abilities.
Thank you very much. We have 2 more questions and then we'll wrap up. And I know there are a lot more messages coming in, and I would hope that we can all get together again and do just strictly a Q&A session at some point soon. And of course, we'll send all these questions off to the candidates, and we'll give you time to let people know how they can get in contact with your campaign and get some of these questions answered. But next audience question: where do you stand on reproductive health, including abortion access for all New Mexican women, regardless of income? Ms. Darien Fernandez.
So I truly believe that we must fully fund Planned Parenthood and all of our organizations so that every woman, regardless of income, has health to the full panoply of all reproductive health care. I'm very proud to be endorsed by Emily's List, which endorses Democratic women and helps elect Democratic women, pro-choice Democratic women. I'm their choice in this forum. I've been endorsed by NARAL and many other women's organizations because they recognize that I am a strong woman's advocate on these issues, so I fully support. It's such a difficult decision with regards to whether or not to carry a pregnancy determined. That is a decision that a woman must make without interference from the government, that she must make in conversation with those she most trusts, whether that's her faith, her family, her doctor, who it is that she most trusts. And so I am in favor of making sure that women have that choice. And more importantly, I think that what's happened now, like where in other states where they're using the COVID as an excuse to restrict this access, they're putting women's lives at risk. And that is very unfortunate in some of the other states. Thank heaven we don't have that here in New Mexico.
Thank you. Ms. Montoya.
I promote policies that are fair and equitable, and women need to have equal access to health care and make the decisions for themselves as to what that access needs to. Making decisions for any other woman. I think that needs to be done with their own personal mentors, their parents, their church, whoever they believe is very close to them to help them and guide them. You have equal access to health care. Women will never have equal access to pay or anything else. And so for me, that's really important.
Thank you. Ms. Plame?
I am a fierce advocate for women's choice. Long before I thought about running for public office, I have supported Planned Parenthood my entire life. I have spoken for them nationally pro bono, and I am outraged that we see today that pandemic is being used by the White House and others in the administration as a means to restrict women's access to essential, critical health care. So we have to continue to allow women to have choice. That's a word says it all for me, choice.
Okay. Mr. Sanchez.
So I oppose late-term abortion where we have a healthy mother and a healthy baby. I think we need to support other programs to make sure we don't get to that point. And that's my position.
Okay. Mr. Cerna.
I love the question as it's written as reproductive health, because that's exactly what we're talking about is reproductive health. You know, people have mentioned Planned Parenthood. What the GOP and their advocates fail to mention about Planned Parenthood is 98% of it is free healthcare for women. 98% is free healthcare, whether it be yearly checkups, education, just general healthcare. It's free healthcare for women. So I just want to put that on the table. But no man or woman, for that matter, should be able to tell a woman what she does with her body and how she decides to choose her healthcare for her body. So with that, I'm in full support of Planned Parenthood and funding for organizations like Planned Parenthood.
Mr. Tisdall.
Yeah, I think women should have autonomy over their bodies and their healthcare choices, period. And the federal or state government has no role in sort of legislating that choice away. And let's be very clear that any access that is limited is not going to prevent abortions from occurring. It is going to prevent safe abortions from occurring, and any limitations on that will be disproportionately felt by the most vulnerable, and will force those that cannot afford proper health care to into risky abortions that will risk their health. And so this is an equity issue that is also at the core here. And so yeah, we absolutely should ensure that women have autonomy, and that should be a right, period.
Okay, Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a proud feminist, and I have been a long-time champion of reproductive choice, and I will continue to do that in Congress. I think what has set me apart in this race has been that I have been vocal proactively about these issues. That months ago, there were multiple towns in northwestern New Mexico that tried to pass so-called sanctuary laws. I spoke out against that. When the case came before the U.S. Supreme Court in the last few months about the horrible law in Louisiana that would limit choice, spoke out against that. Have been speaking out about what's happening in Texas and other states right now. And so the real thing that I think that is important about reproductive choice is a yes vote is important, but a champion, someone who will speak out, who will bring people to Planned Parenthood to see the fundamental healthcare services they're providing to men and women, and to bring people who may not normally know about these sort of reproductive choice issues. Make sure that men are educated, make sure that the queer community is fully educated, make sure that everyone is educated on these issues, because this is about a woman's right to choose, and I will guarantee that she has that.
Okay. How are all of you spending your time in quarantine? And let's try to keep these answers short so we can start wrapping up. And let's see, last time we started with Teresa, so this time we'll start with Ms. Montoya.
What was?
How are you spending your time in quarantine?
Maybe come back to her.
Yeah, I think so. Ms. Plame.
I am enjoying hiking where I don't see a soul and don't think about politics. But when I'm home with my college-age twins who are allegedly going to class online, we're doing a 1,000-piece crossword puzzle.
All right. Mr. Sanchez.
Well, part of what I've been trying to do is anyone that keeps up with my Facebook, I've been trying to volunteer to help people in need as much as possible. That's pretty tough right now. I also been taking time to work around the house, doing things that I don't usually have time for, like burning a lot of weeds, just helping my father irrigate. That's always on there, but just doing stuff around the family farm.
Okay. Mr. Cerna?
Oh gosh, well, part of this sign back here, projects for Anna East, who's 6 and homeschooling, which is quite the task at times, more for Leticia, God bless her. Spending time with Joaquin, which has been wonderful. Even when he's fussy, I still love to spend time with him. Luckily, I've gotten back into running, which I certainly appreciate. I'm very sore as a result of that. But also Zoom with family has been fun. It's not the same thing, but family and friends to be able to talk with people. And this has actually allowed me to reach out to old college buddies that I hadn't talked to, since the last wedding, it seems, and that was a blast. But also trying to partake in community efforts. We did a video with the Santa Fe Humane Society to encourage dog adoptions and really trying to still be an active community member in addition to taking calls for work and campaigning. But it's been interesting to stay home, but it's been a pleasant surprise also.
Mr. Tisdall?
Yeah, I think a big part of the quarantine has been having my kids climb all over me while I'm trying to do work. But that's actually been a great joy. I think, between my day job and then campaigning, it's been really hard to be away from the family. So it's a blessing to actually be spending a lot more time at home and outside and trying to garden and do chores around the house and clean up the acequia and all of those things. I think the thing that our family is also really focused on, and this is not just myself, but it's my wife and it's my, mother-in-law and father-in-law and my kids as well, is we're all really focused on those in our neighborhood and in our community that don't have services right now, who lack food, who are on the margins, and we're out there trying to support in any way we can, whether that's making connections between providing food and distributing food, as well as making connections with many of our small businesses and trying to be of service there. So I think anything in this moment is those that are capable is using this as an opportunity to try to be of greater service beyond just themselves and their family.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
My husband and my dog and I have been hiking as much as possible to be outside. We have a friend who's actually been coordinating people to bake treats to deliver to staff working at St. Vincent Hospital. So we made a bunch of cookies on Saturday. Puzzles, Legos, all that. We've done a couple Zoom cocktail hours with friends across the country and birthday parties and things like that. We've been trying to up the social media game for the campaign a little bit and do a mix of serious policy stuff, but also some fun stuff. My husband may or may not be cutting my hair live on Facebook this weekend, so tune in for that. But just, trying to spend as much quality time and really connect with the people around.
Thank you. Ms. Leisure Fernandez?
So I am a working mom, so I've still been doing work for our clients. They're really hard hit during this crisis. And so, I've been called upon to provide assistance from here. We've also been doing pro bono work in terms of helping small businesses apply for the payroll protection loans. And so we've done some of that, which is important. But with the boys, I have 3 sons who are now home. One of them came in earlier, we cook together and we do a lot of dancing. So I've shared some of my moves with them and they've shared some of their moves with me. And so, that creates the happiness in the house. But it has been nice to be able to quickly move from, I get energy when I'm out talking to people and with people. So I've really enjoyed actually the Zoom events we've had as part of the campaign, whether they'd be on policy or, like the fun. We've actually only done serious stuff. I'm going to try to do some of that fun stuff, John. But it's been really wonderful to see everybody and to connect even this way. I miss the fact that I can't see all these wonderful people who are at this Zoom meeting with me. So hello, everybody out there. I wish I could see your faces.
All right, thank you. And we'll go back to Ms. Montoya. And if you are still having problems, I can read the answers that you've typed. Otherwise, you can try to speak them out to us. Okay. Ms. Montoya said she has been spending her time on the work side. She's been working on how to have her team telework, inform taxpayers of property tax season, and how important their payment helps us to deliver food to seniors, help fire, EMT, etc., working on the county budget, working on trying to get essential workers to be able to sleep at hotels because several are sleeping in their vehicles, helping women get fabric to make masks, working with some pueblos and chapters for things needed, helping with food donations in several counties, and helping her mother and dad take care of her 95-year-old great aunt. And let's see, she says she's also working on stimulus package number 4, making sure local governments get the funding directly instead of through the state. And I hope I read that accurately. That's what's typed up in the chats. All right, cool. Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties there, but that's all the more reason for New Mexico to get water to underserved areas and broadband and everything else that's been talked about. Panelists, I want to thank all of you tonight for taking the time to be on this Zoom chat and even going a little bit over what we initially asked of you. I appreciate your flexibility in that. I want to thank all of the attendees who are still on the call, and we still have about 150 people watching us, so this has obviously been very interesting across the district. And the response that we got, the RSVP that we got, was all over the state. And it's a testament to our state party for helping to promote this. It's a testament to all of your campaigns to getting it out to your people, and getting your base to show up and support you and ask questions tonight. It really is my hope that we can get together and do this again. Maybe we can have like more of a social hour, have a beer, chat type of conversation, get some Q&A done, and
that sounds wonderful.
A little bit less formal. Yeah, it probably sounds more fun. Although who knows what's in all of your cups tonight, right?
Just joking.
I
noticed that red cup, John.
Just water. Y'all are great. Y'all are, we've seen you at parades. We've seen you at meet and greets. You're really working the district, and this is as tough a district to work as any out there. Really, I think it takes someone with a plane to be able to hit it in one day because of the geographic expanse. So one of you will be our next representative, and I thank all of you for being here tonight. The party thanks you for being here. All of our audience members, thank you for being here, and let's do it again soon. I want to turn it over to our Lieutenant Governor for a second, if he has anything else that he wants to say, and then I'll ask each of you to just give your closing remarks and thank yous and how to get a hold of you, etc.
Thank you. Again, I just want to reiterate my amazed, just the learning that took place right now for me. I was just amazed at all of the candidates and the perspectives that you bring. You guys make us proud, and I want to continue to work together with you. And I want to make sure and ensure all the people who are listening through Zoom that they recognize that these individuals truly care about New Mexico. And I'm so proud to be part of this panel to listen in and to learn from each one of you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We'll start with Mr. Blair.
How much time do we have? I want to thank everybody for watching tonight. Okay. Again, I'm hopeful that you all are healthy and safe, and that you are getting the support you need if you're struggling. Again, for me, this election comes down to experience. I'm the only candidate in this race who's worked in the U.S. House, in the U.S. Senate, worked for President Obama, worked in every branch of state government. And when we're facing a global pandemic and a climate crisis and a constitutional crisis, epidemic of gun violence, opioids, housing crises, infrastructure crises, we can't afford to elect someone who's going to be learning on the job. And so I ask for your vote. My website, my social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook are all exactly the same. John Blair for New Mexico, John Blair FOR New Mexico. Please follow along, but I ask for your support and I ask for your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that's a good length for comments. Ms. Leisure Fernandez.
So yes, I thank everybody for getting together and Taos for doing this. What I often say is that I think it's really important that our next Congresswoman know not only the beauty of this wonderful, wonderful place we call home, but also its poverty, its obstacles, but also the opportunities that can come from working in that community. And I have been working in this community for 30 years at every level, with tribes, with the local level, at the state level. And I have served 2 presidents. So I served both President Clinton and worked on affordable housing with him at the first White House Conference on Housing. And then I served Obama. I was his vice chair on the Council on Historic Preservation. And that was because he named me that because of the long history I have of environmental protection and cultural protection. I am going to bring the knowledge, the deep knowledge I have of this community in New Mexico with me and marry it with the experience that I have at the federal level and the leadership. These positions I've had have been all about leadership, and that's what New Mexico needs. And I'm going to be doing it from that place. I say I'm running to protect what we love, because when we love is the strongest and most passionate emotion that we can have in order to allow our communities to thrive. And I'll be bringing that kind of passion to the job. My website is, it's easy, Teresa for all, TeresaForall.com, because I intend to represent all. So TeresaForall.com, and I'm also on Facebook, Teresa Fernandez. I hope you find me there, and I hope you join us in the many events we'll be having over the next several weeks.
Thank you. Ms. Montoya.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Now we can.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I am so sorry for internet service out here, but I want to thank all of you for this conversation. I want to make sure that everyone can go to my Facebook, Instagram, all of that. It's Laura M4NM. My website's lauramontoya4nm.com. I want to bring the 20 on working for Senator Jeff Bingaman at the federal level, working as the Finance, Pension and Intergovernmental Affairs Vice Chair with the National Association of Counties, helping get policies at the national level done for the last 7 years, working at the New Mexico legislature for over 15 years, and getting over 20 bills passed in the last 7 years as the legislative chair for the Treasurer's Affiliate. I bring a lot of experience to the table, but being from New Mexico, knowing the district very well, knowing the issues, I think it's critical that we send somebody that has that experience and can use the relationships to help us move forward. I want to thank you all for this opportunity, and if you could please consider, 1, making sure you got your census taken care of this year, and 2, that you double check that you have gotten your absentee ballot all registered and that you have the right address on there, so that we can make sure that we count, that we have better representation for ourselves, and that we can bring federal funding into New Mexico that is critically for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Plame.
Thank you, everyone, for an opportunity to do this evening. I believe that our community, our state, and our nation deserves someone who's really going to fight, a proven fighter. I went through the Bush-Cheney ringer, and I survived. I came to New Mexico to remake my life, and this is my home. And I want to fight like that for New Mexico. And heaven knows, as we get through this together, we will need it. Our economy is going to be battered, and you want someone who has crisis management experience, leadership experience, and I have that in spades from my years doing covert work in the CIA. So I am asking for your support and to place your trust in me, because you know you will have someone in Congress who will be your voice, who will govern with integrity and with heart. And I thank you for this opportunity this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez.
So as many of you know, we have a lot of strong candidates. What differentiates me is I'm an electrical engineer. My strength is in listening, building relationships. You don't become vice chair of the Appropriations Committee for the state of New Mexico unless the Democratic Party has confidence in you. I have executive experience. I ran Jemez Mountains Electric, $100 million in assets, the largest co-op in the state, serving 5 counties, over 30,000 customers. I have government experience. I'm currently the state rep for New Mexico District 40. Legislative experience, education, 2 master's degrees, engineering, business. People talk about leadership. When I ran Jemez Mountains, I had over 110 employees. I don't know who can say they had that, maybe a few of the candidates, but the strength I bring is that experience, education and experience. And I just want to encourage people to follow my Facebook. I'm putting out videos almost daily on different topics and issues. And I just want to thank the Democratic Party of Taos and all the people listening in San Miguel and all the other counties. Thank you guys for the time and for putting this together.
Thank you. Mr. Serna.
Again, I would like to thank everybody for listening. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chair, and the Taos Democratic Party for scheduling this. I've had the pleasure and honor of serving as district attorney for the 1st Judicial District, and I would be more than honored and have much pleasure in serving the 3rd Congressional District as your next congressman. What separates me from these other fine candidates is a few things. First, I was the first to publicly call for the impeachment of Trump, even when it wasn't popular. And there's a few individuals on this call, my fellow candidates, who were in agreement with the leadership. Luckily, they have changed their focus on that, or at least did change, and they did it for the right reasons, because this individual needed to be held accountable. As a prosecutor, I read the Mueller report and I saw that he was culpable in many of the things that he did. So it was the right thing to do. The reason I say that is you want a leader who's willing to speak up even when it's not the most popular politically, and that's what I did. Second, I am the only candidate with detailed position papers on my website on issues that not only affect New Mexico, but affect the nation. And that includes a position paper on COVID-19. So I ask you all to look at my website, www.marco4congress.com. That's FOR, not the number 4. I would be honored to serve this district. So I respectfully ask for your support, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tisdall.
Well, thank you to the Taos Democratic Party, Lieutenant Governor Morales, for joining us. For all of you out there, I thank you. My kids thank you as well for being able to stay up past their bedtime. You know, I've spent my career, fighting against the federal government and the fossil fuel industry for the exploitation of people and communities in New Mexico and around the country. I did not aspire to become a politician, but I got into this race because the timeline for action is short, and I am fighting for a livable planet. I'm fighting for a future for my kids, and I'm calling for the systemic transformation of the very systems that are at the root of this crisis. And I think the moment that we find ourselves in now is but a precursor, perhaps, to some of the larger disruptions that we will see in the future if we do not have a serious plan for transforming the very fabric of our society. And there is tremendous opportunity for New Mexico and this country if we are able to lead in that transition. And that opportunity needs to be seized upon. And quite frankly, we need leadership in Congress with the vision and the plan and the commitment to get that done. That is why I've gotten into this race. It is to build a movement, and I ask all of you out there to help me do that. You can visit my website at tisdallforcongress.com, as well as find me on all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as well. And again, thank you also to all of the other candidates. It was nice to chat with you all this evening, and good to see your faces as well. And be healthy and safe out there, everyone.
Candidates, thank you all very much again for taking the time to do this tonight. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Morales, for hanging with us and offering your input and your insight, and for your leadership during this very troubled time for our state and for our country and for the world. Stay safe, everyone. Stay home. Request your absentee ballot so that we can have a safe election by mail. And wash your hands, use your sanitizer. And in addition to that, if you haven't already completed your census questionnaire, please do your census questionnaire, because that determines how we're going to be represented for the next 10 years and how much money we get in our state. So census, vote by mail, and stay safe. And again, thank you all very much. On behalf of the Taos County Democratic Party and our officers, we can't wait to do this again, but in person and from a safe standpoint. So have a great evening. We will see you all soon.
Thank you.
Virtual hugs.
Thank you.
All right.
Virtual.
Stay safe, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.